Welcome to Leaders Forum. These are conversations to transform yourself and your world. And we're excited to have you here today. I'm here with Peggy O'Neal and Sheila Kelly, and I'm Danna Beal. And we're going to talk about leadership, but first I'd like each of you to tell a little bit about your background and why we want to talk about leadership. So Peggy or Sheila, whoever. Peggy?
Sure. So my background is I've been coaching for 35 years. I practiced law for 12 before that. And I also had some experience in the political world working for Bill Clinton when he was Attorney General, Governor, and when he was president. So there's that leadership. And then the last 35 years of coaching, I've been coaching executives and leaders and entrepreneurs and other professionals in leadership capacities. And what I bring to the leadership conversation is the last few years I've been studying the great wisdom traditions. And so I bring that history of who are we really, who are we? That big question of who am I, who are we, and working with leaders to be able to access more their own wisdom and the wisdom of the universe as they engage as leaders in their organizations, their families, their communities, the world.
Beautiful. Thank you. Sheila.
Thank you, Danna. Thank you, Peggy. Yes, I'm Sheila Kelly. I live in Halifax, Nova Scotia, Canada. And I haven't been coaching as long as Peggy has, but I was certainly a pioneer coach here in Nova Scotia and Canada. And I came out of the corporate world really rather jaded about some of the corporate training that I experienced. And I decided that I wanted to make a difference in how leaders and managers were approaching their workplace and their roles. And at that time, coaching was basically unheard of here in Nova Scotia. And I was delighted when I discovered that this wonderful thing called coaching. And I learned to coach through one of the most respected and prestigious coaching schools in all the world. It used to be called the Coaches Training Institute. Now it's called the Coactive Training School. So I started coaching, and I've coached hundreds of individuals over thousands of hours, mostly middle and senior managers in the corporate world. And I've recently discovered a program that kind of fast tracks leadership. And because I believe that leadership is an inside out type of job, if you want to call it a job, so that it's what's going on in the inside that really determines how effective we are in our leadership roles. And without getting into the weeds of what this program is, I will say that I used to ask for 6 months, a minimum of 6 months of weekly meetings with my clients. And I've discovered that this program in about 8 weeks will accomplish a lot of what I used to ask my clients 6 months for. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the program is really about removing the barriers to being our authentic self, because that's really what's in the way. And those barriers are some of them are stress, our saboteurs, and our old mindset that get in the way. So I think that's enough for now.
Well, that was great, Sheila. I'm in total agreement with both of you. And I'm Danna Beal. I'm an author of a book. My most recent book is The Illuminated Workplace, Shining Light on Workplace Culture. But I've also been a speaker all over the United States at national and international conventions on leadership. And I call it enlightened leadership. But it's what you're talking about, both of you. And what got me into this is I woke up in 2000, January of 2000, with just this very clear vision and basically a download that told me today's workplace is a web of egos battling and competing for power. Managers who disempower employees and employees who hurt and sabotage one another. There's fear, there's anxiety, there's gossip, there's backbiting, there's competition, internal competition, which doesn't help an organization. And I actually thought, wow, that's a lot. But I've worked with so many industries. I've been in every industry, and I realized it's really true. And I started speaking out that we need to change the whole workplace culture, because the people on their knees don't perform very well. And it's actually costing companies a lot to have a bad workplace culture. And so my book, The Illuminated Workplace, is similar to what both of you said, teaching people the inner path to the authentic self. And it's removing the barriers that block us. And I would say it's the path to our soul. And I call it the unification with the soul. So I think we're all three saying it's a very spiritual process. It's not as simple, do these 10 steps and now you're a leader, which some training programs would like us to believe. So I think we'd all decided it'd be just a really good way to start our first podcast by describing what we've been, experiencing and teaching on the path to being an authentic leader. So we might as well go in the same order. Peggy, do you want to start?
Yeah, so what brought me to understanding more about authentic leadership was in 2007, I kind of threw in the towel with my coaching business. I had my own coaching business because I was feeling inauthentic. I was just miserable. I thought, how can I be coaching if I'm this miserable? And make a very long story very short, it took about 11 years before I came across what I was talking about earlier, the great wisdom traditions. And the message that came to me in that reading, just in reading the book, was, and understanding the book, was that what we're seeking is already within. And that was so illuminating because, as using your beautiful word, Danna, is that I think most of us, or most leaders, I'll put it in that context, most leaders I've been working with, and how I was working with them was trying to get somewhere. Who do you want to be? And let's help you develop those abilities, those capacities, those skills, whatever. And I realized that I could start working with people, as you're both saying too, going within, and because it's already there. The leader I truly want to be is already right here. In fact, I had a client about that time that said that whole thing to him, like, well, who do you want to be? And he said, no, it's not who I want to be. I want to be who I am. And that was such a profound insight for me that he just intuitively knew as well. So to me, authentic leadership is, first, if I feel like I really want to be a leader, then to know that then you already know it's not even how to be a leader. It's there. And so it's allowing yourself to know that. And the key to me in all of this was what the great wisdom traditions offer is that we are one being. We share our being with everyone and everything. And that's the language is a little off because we don't share our being with anything because we're one being. But it's in that knowing and that come from that shifts my perspective as a leader, my ability as a leader, how I'm going to be as a leader. And that is, to me, authentic leadership.
That's beautiful. And really what you're saying is that we're all one. It's like Albert Einstein said, we're all interconnected. We need to expand our compassion to all living things because we are all one. And what we give, we're giving to ourselves. Oh, thank you, Peggy. Sheila, tell us some of the things that you've discovered and taught with your clients.
And it's been such a privilege to work with my clients. And what's been interesting is when they come to me, they often, have this vague idea of, I want to be a better leader, that they can't really get their hands on, even though they've had, or get their minds around, because even though they've had a lot of training, as you talked about, Danna, do these 10 things and you'll be a leader extraordinaire. So as I've worked with clients and as I know about myself, a lot of it is just making peace with who you are, which is kind of related to what Peggy said, that we do have everything that we need. We come fully, we're complete. And one thing that we have that I like to emphasize with my clients is that we all have this great wisdom. We have access to all the wisdom and knowledge of the universe. And yet we've boxed ourselves into this, all these shoulds and have tos. A leader has to do this, and they should be doing that. And it's almost like freeing yourself of all the shoulds and all the have tos, not in a way that makes you a loose cannon in the workplace, but in a way that allows you to make peace with who you are. So that at the end of the coaching engagement, my clients say, I'm just more accepting of myself, and I'm not as stressed, because we just get caught up in what we think other people, or what other people tell us we should be. And that's a carryover from our childhood, actually. So again, authentic leadership is about making peace with who you are and expressing yourself from your highest wisdom to the best of your ability, because it's a process. We don't, I was lucky enough, I did have an experience where I had a big shift in recognizing who I was. But even then, even when we have these moments of great clarity and great wisdom, it's still a process, because we've been so, I use the word programmed, we've been so programmed to be a certain way that it almost becomes our default. This is how I'm supposed to be. So it's about accepting yourself and loving yourself. I know Danna loves to use the love word, but it's about loving yourself. And again, not to do harm, not to do harm. Don't accept that part of you that maybe wants to lash out, but be as loving and compassionate as you can. And from there, you just start to grow. Yeah.
Beautiful. Both of you are saying such wise and true and authentic perspectives of what we all are and what we all are aiming to be, that I think is so many things to add. But I'm going to just start with, to continue on the idea that it's already in us. We are love, and love, universal love, is the power that sustains all life, and we're all part of that. And part of the acceptance is trusting, if the power that sustains all life is that powerful, it's also sustaining our lives. And go in trust and accept ourselves and love ourselves. And that, I find, is the hardest thing for most people. It's that self-forgiveness, the compassion for oneself because of the expectations, like you said, Sheila. And we've all been, we're born this sweet, innocent soul, but we take on and learn who we're supposed to be. I call it the starring role profile. And then it's a process of discovering the barriers to get back to who we really are. And so I think it's, of Course in Miracles would say this, I say this, everyone says this, but I think it's really true. It's really, are we going to choose fear, which is what drives us to create the starring role and get everyone to like us, or are we going to choose love, which is what we are, our authentic self? And so when we talk about leaders that are authentic, in my experience, I have had some really amazing leaders that the ones that stood out, including teachers, including leaders in business, including leaders in government. The leaders that stand out are humble, they have humility, they're authentic, they have a social understanding of other people, they actually have a real affinity for other people. And they can say, I'm sorry. They can say, I was wrong. They can say, give me feedback. And they help everyone collaborate. So to anyone who's listening to us today, discovering those qualities that are already in you are the very things that can help other people collaborate and come forth and share in your business or your government or your school or wherever it is. And I say, if we can learn to do that one by one, that would change the world.
Mhm, mhm,
It would end wars.
mhm.
If we could learn to see that we're all the same, learn to give up our fear of not being good enough, our fear of being separate, and our need to try to empower ourselves to somehow be worthy. So those are my thoughts on leadership, and we still have a few minutes. So let's go around one more time, and because as we talk, more things come up. And any of you, you don't have to go in order. Any thoughts as we continue this conversation?
Well, one of the things that came to me as I'm listening to you is that as we experience, remove the veils that keep us from knowing who we truly are, lead with that open-heartedness that really we all deep down want to, that as we relax and the stress relaxes and we experience that freedom, when we experience the that I don't have to prove myself anymore, or get somewhere, or get better. Oh, I can just relax into my own being. Then it helps everybody around. Everybody then relaxes and they know they're not being judged. And so everything that an organization is looking for, the high performance, the resilience, the creativity, that all naturally occurs when the leader is authentically leading from his or her heart the way that we're talking about today. Then the other just is a natural reflection of that. That experience just overflows into the work environment. It seems counter to what so many of us are taught. We've got to control, we've got to get in charge, we've got to manage people. No, we don't. No, I mean, yeah, there's some organization to it.
And how freeing is that?
Yes.
How freeing is that? Like, I don't have to control you. I don't have all the answers. That's totally freeing. You reminded me, I heard a neuroscientist speaking about stress. And number one, we're all leaders, right? I think the three of us agree with that. Leadership has nothing to do with being a CEO or a CFO or anything like that. We're all leaders because we all have power to control or manage who we are and how we're showing up. But this neuroscience talked about something that I'd never heard of before. And she does work with CEOs and executives. And she talked about the fact that when we're stressed out, of course, we secrete more cortisol, which is the stress hormone. And the people around us actually, because we are so evolved and because we are one, Peggy, because we are one, we sense all of that that's going on. We're kind of like dogs, you know, we can sniff out what's going on around us. And the CEO that is stressed out and secreting all this cortisol is actually like a contagion in the workplace.
Oh.
The CEO is actually creating more stress in the workplace. Now, to me, it doesn't really have to do, we can say that without understanding that the cortisol is responsible, because stress, we can tell when somebody's stressed out, but I just thought it was so interesting that this is the impact we have, each of us, on our environment, and we are one. We're not separate. We know what's going on at some level all the time. Just so interesting.
That's very interesting. I often say that those kind of leaders that are on emitting cortisol, or not emitting it, but transmitting.
Well, it's coming out their pores. It's coming out their pores. Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Well, they're operating from fear. That's the big distinction that I think. A lot of times women and some more evolved men, but there are a lot of men, because of our culture, they've thought that power is to have power over someone. And I think what we're really saying here today is it's the inner work that makes you whole, and then you are able to not put on these big you know, do all the things to try to look like an important boss. And in fact, I list some of the imposter bosses that are operating from fear rather than authenticity. And there's one that I call the bully boss, and they have to know more than everybody else, and they push everybody around. They don't invite any feedback. There is the star that has to be the star of the team or the star of the company. There are empire builders that need lots of things to prove they're powerful. There are even the micromanager is controlling, and that limits the people that they are intending to help. They're actually hurting them by micromanaging them. And so, and some people are a combination of all those parts. But statistically, the evidence shows people working under those kind of bosses or leaders perform poorly. In fact, they're secretly wanting to leave. They're secretly looking. They're part of the great disruption that's going on right now. The great, people are leaving their jobs because the power is switching. What's the word? The great
resignation.
Yeah, the great resignation. And I just recently did a workshop for an international company, and the HR people said their company is, trying to be very demanding, making everybody come back to work full time when they really don't need to. And people are leaving, and they're having a hard time recruiting. And their statistic, Gallup says it's never going to go back to the way it was. And some leaders believe if we get you back in the buildings, we can control you. But true leadership isn't demanding. It honors the people that they're leading, or so-called leading. So I think that we're all three trying to share with our listeners what we have found being wise people that we've lived a long time and experienced a lot, that we want to share with some of the people that are younger and going into these leadership roles. If you want to be a successful leader, it's the inner path to authentic power.
Beautifully said.
Absolutely.
Any other thoughts? We still have a few minutes.
I think
We probably have 5 or 10 minutes if you have some more thoughts on that.
No, I think it might be a good way to end, Danna. Thank you.
good. Yeah, I agree.
Okay, well, this was great, and we're going to do these frequently, and we'll put them on our podcast. We'll put them on YouTube. We'll put them in a Facebook group, etc. And we hope that this was helpful to people. And again, this is Peggy O'Neal and Sheila Kelly and Danna Beal. And thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.